Hi, this is Privateer Station, and today we bring you day 486 of Putin's invasion into Ukraine. As always, with former advisor to the Office of the President of Ukraine, Lieutenant Colonel Olexiy Arestovych, and Russian opposition politician, lawyer, and blogger Mark Feygin. Thank you guys for your continuous support. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, WBin. Your input is also appreciated and noticed. And with that, we dive into day 486 and the analytics on what just happened in the last couple of days. Enjoy. Dear friends, I'm glad to see you all on Feygin Live. It is Saturday, June 24th. Time is 10 p.m., 1 minute past 10 in Kiev, same time in Moscow. And we're doing our usual stream, day 486, with Olexiy Arestovych. Olexiy, we're glad to see you. Hello, hello. We have 62,000 starting with us. We expected more, but we understand that people are a little disappointed. But regardless, 15,000's already clicked the like button, so please continue clicking like buttons and sharing links to our work. Do not forget to subscribe to Feygin Live, to Olexiy Arestovych, and to the Privateer Station if you are listening or watching that in English language. And let's start with, which news do you think we're going to talk about? Oh, I have no clue, Mark. I have no clue. Right here, at a loss. Tell us, what the heck was it? I'm puzzled. I'm thinking for 2 hours already. I am in a dumb position of having to comment all that madness. I talked about that, and right before the meeting talked more, but yesterday when I reached out to you and said, hey, let's do a stream, people are asking, I had a post on that I made, Prigozhin will lose, Ukraine will win. And I think that still stands. Everything turned from just words to actions in the morning, right? There was some expectations, but since the feeling was that there is no resistance, there is no real resistance. If everything is so good, why is it so easy? Mark, who would want to resist him? Why people would want to resist Prigozhin, or to those who were supposed to stop him or slow him down? For what? For Putin? I think, and let's follow the list. First of all, I think this is not over. This is far from over. There's a ton of different versions, different ideas. He needs more legitimization because apparently there was fakery in terms of attacking his camps, and that was a complete fake that his camps were attacked from behind. And then he needed more legitimization in terms of, look, we went and agreed to return to camps, and perhaps we will be hit in the back again. We'll see. Because to take Moscow, one would actually need to start killing those soldiers that are thrown to protect it. You'll have to start killing Russian guard, the police, and whoever will be defending Moscow. So this will not add points to his political stance. So he would need to be in a situation where he was going for peace, but he was forced to wage war. So that's if you look at the situation from his point. If you look from the point of Russian powers, somebody started a mutiny, captured the headquarters, the military command of the whole area, shot down several helicopters, had a shootout with Russian guard and took their block post out, and then jumped in their vehicles and started their march on Moscow. Would you forgive such person? No, that's absolutely a no-go. Exactly. That means that from the Russian power standpoint, a person like Prigozhin is already sentenced. I think the order is even signed. Yep. So the question is, do you think Prigozhin realizes that? It's a good question. If he doesn't realize that, he's an idiot. Exactly. He doesn't look too much like an idiot, so it means that he understands. Will he, in that situation, accept just mom awaiting for his liquidation? Good question. What do you think they could have offered him? How do you think they could have bought him? And the information that they brought up was Lukashenko, that he was supposedly the one who negotiated with Prigozhin. Very strange figure, but whatever. What do you think could have been offered if this is not a staging stuff? I don't think it's staging because they did shoot down several helicopters. As an agreement and a setup where Putin was dipped into shit several times a day, and when his military just put arms down and changed sides and started following Wagner, when his patriotic community split and started fighting each other. So staging means there's usually a very thought out process with different steps. And this is going to be too complex to play into any scenario here. So I don't believe that that's what happened. I could believe that there was a breakage somewhere in Russian elites. There was some conflict brooding that eventually happened. And now we saw the Act 1 of that conflict, but there probably will be Act 2 and 3 later. But I don't see any benefits from such a staged set of events when the loss is losing the authority of all the country, internally and externally as well. How did the world outside see that? It's a nuclear state where nobody manages anything, where it's a complete mess, where armed mutineers can shoot down aviation and go towards Moscow, promising to attack president, promising that there'll be a new president, calling the current president a dick, and then just disband and go back to the front. Who is Putin after that? That somehow reminds me of some African scenario. Right, the whole building of Russian government is what? It's nothing, it's Bantustan. And if this was staging, if this was staged, do you think Duda would elevate his armed forces to a condition of heightened alert? Why do you think he did that? Lithuania didn't do that, Finland didn't do that, and other countries didn't do that. Poland did. You'd think that all countries would, right? But Poland did. Again, Lukashenko was a factor in the conflict. The statement of Kalinovsky regiment was also a factor. There was a lot of things happening, but I'm not seeing out the whole picture, but I have with a confidence of 99%, nothing is over yet. I know it's easier to take pessimistic position and say that it was prearranged and then just be happy and say, hey, I told you so. So I'm stating a different position here. Nothing is over, because in the country where you can kick the doors of the headquarters of the military command, this country is doomed. This country doesn't exist anymore. Today is what, 23rd? Today is 24th. So starting from June 24th, symbolically, it ceased to exist. Everything else is inertia, regardless of how long will it last. Russian government had ceased to exist, de facto. Because if they did not agree about something, Prigozhin would have been in Putin's chair this morning. Well, they could have agreed about something there, right? No, he would actually be sitting in Putin's chair. Putin would probably have fled. There is nobody to defend him. There could have been a couple days of fighting near Moscow. And if they managed to sustain their anti-elite discussion, they would have got a ton of sympathizers. They would have bent over Kadyrovs and would have gotten the love of whole Russia. And then you take a seat and start doing reasonable politics. He was about 15 minutes away from that. What could have stopped him? 15 minutes to chair, to throne. And, mutiny is a very white and black thing. You're either a winner or you're a sentenced. It cannot be over in the intermediary phase, especially in Russia. It is technically impossible. So if tonight or a week or 2 weeks later we'll hear that the camps were shelled again and now nobody is going to stop because this is horrible and they shot our back when we agreed to some peace agreement, or something else, some other weird turn of events that will fire everything up again, I think 99% probability that something will continue going on, something will happen. History of Russia cannot continue in the flow that it did before. A ton of people openly revealed their anti-elite position, that they are ready to dismantle the current regime. And this cannot be left in a status quo, under no circumstance. All right, we have 220,000 with us, 65,000 click the like button. We are starting a poll, trying to understand from our viewers, Prigozhin's raid, is it a mutiny or a prearranged event? Mutiny, 42%, prearranged, 58%. We are pretty sharp. We are offering pretty sharp options. It's either or. There is no third way out. So please vote. We'll try to understand what our audience thinks. There is one more interesting point that I wanted to bring up for myself. On the eve of what happened there with the supposed shelling and all, he gave a mono statement, where Prigozhin was talking about the state of army, about the number of dead, about disorganization, thievery, everything that Arestovych and myself were discussing at length at these 16 months of war. And very often we were even attacked by a Russian audience that you're just inventing things, that this is not real. And Prigozhin, in his interview, basically this interview was covered by the whole event, the whole mutiny later. But in that interview, he did essentially, it feels like he was reading our earlier streams about the state of Russian military. And he was drawing that picture from all the basics that we already covered during the last year. And when we are talking about that, we still get enough resistance from Russian side saying that you guys are too naive, you're too gloom, this is not how Russian military works. But when Prigozhin comes out with that interview was actually very amazingly well accepted. So that information was finally believed. Mark, there is a very exotic version that I just read, that Prigozhin was not setting up a military coup, but he was the one who prevented that. That there was an attempt for military coup from Shoigu and some other people, and this sudden raid that broke it. And Shoigu is arrested, etc. Oh, Olexiy, this would be a very difficult one. Right, it's a very dark story, but a twisted one. But we'll see. We'll see. This flow of events cannot end in peace accord. 236,000 are with us. Another important question, regardless of the stoppage of all these events that we actually welcomed, regardless that Prigozhin and Putin are equal enemies for us, we're not on anybody's specific side. And some people are screaming at me saying, you're idiots, should be supporting Prigozhin. But regardless, do you think Ukrainian military can use that situation to start counteroffensive on the areas that were not involved much yet? Or maybe the whole Crimea front? Can that help even cancel this mutiny that brought even more disorganization and confusion in the ranks of Russian rather pathetic military in the south and in the east? Do you think this will help? Mahler, Vice Minister of Defense. Yeah, Mark Mahler. Her last name is Mahler. Yeah, sorry, I said it in the Russian manner. We actually did start a bit of offensive on the east. Let's bring the map up and talk about it. She said Orekhov-Vassilyevo direction and Donbass mostly. Bakhmut, Kurdyumovka. You can see a couple of red arrows from us to them. At the bottom one is near Kurdyumovka. And then there is also Bogdanovka, slightly to the west of Verkhovka. That's where we are pushing, and we're starting more actions there. And if you go further, near Yampol, in that area, that's their attempt to attack Belogorovka. See these three more arrows, actually 5 and 6. So they're trying to push in the north. We're still active in Donetsk region. Also, Avdiivka and Marinka down in the south, that's where they are being active. You can see some red arrows here. And we also have Orekhivska-Vasilievska direction near Pitikhatki, Lapkova, etc. in the south. Now, there are no statements how far did we go and how much did we take. They were just general statements made that we are progressing rather successfully. Still a question, how do you measure that? Another exotic version. Shoigu is being removed and Prigozhin is now Minister of Defense. No, this is done immediately, right? You don't do it later. Yeah, Mark, I'm just collecting the weirdest explanations so that people, instead of honestly accepting, I don't know, human conscience often takes something, it starts to invent some smart theory. So instead of saying, I don't know, like I can say, I don't know. I understand that everything is not over yet, but I don't know what exactly happened. So, yeah, in the south, of course, we started motion, but one needs to understand that the events of such magnitude would affect the front mostly. If Prigozhin would have reached Kremlin and Putin would have left, then army would have questions about legitimacy of what's happening, and having a central command and leader that actually leads them somewhere. And until then, the detachments that are actually on the front, they don't really have too much time to check the phone news and all, or at least they do it more rarely than the others. And also, how do you gauge that? On the front, your conscience is very narrow. You have white and black tasks, and a lot of other information is just being filtered out. So it is difficult to make a judgment on the events coming like that from the back, but they have to make decisions about the attacking Ukrainian forces. Well, the only thing that will sway them is when their general command, the central command, is disbanded, or there are new people commanding them. That could have affected the morale and the activity. Not that they would run away, but they would probably slow down their actions until new leadership determines what they're going to be doing. And them lowering their activity would have allowed us to do some things, but to have something affect the front in just 12 to 18 hours, no, that doesn't work like that. All right, it doesn't. Let's also look from the other side. Positions of the West. There was a lot of news that Biden talked to Macron, to Rishi Sunak and the others. They were consulting throughout the events unfolding. Immediately, the head of chiefs of staff, also chiefs of military in the United States, canceled his trip to the east. And I'm reading some news here. United States is going to delay slapping new sanctions on Wagner in Russia. Department of State was planning to slap new sanctions on Wagner on the 27th of June related to the actions of Wagner in Africa. So more people canceled their trips, but in general, the West was a bit concerned. We don't know the details of the consultations they had between the President of the United States, Prime Minister of Germany, French President, and Prime Minister of Great Britain. But they were observing that and were getting ready to act. What actions do you think they could have negotiated and discussed? Because there was a statement made by Medvedev when nothing was real clear. I actually liked it. And he said, do you think we'll give control over nukes to some gangsters? And these are the gangsters that they praised just a day before that Wagner is one of their best troops. The funny part also that March, in March, they actually adopted a law that prohibited people from criticizing private mercenary corps like Wagner. So everybody who is now shitting on Wagner, they should go to jail, right? According to that. And now the West canceled their sanctions for a while. And now Wagner agreed with Putin about something, so I guess the sanctions can be slapped again. So it's kind of funny. But we understand that the West probably was concerned because there was a risk, and they brought a part of their detachments to the highest level of alertness. Because let's not name them, because there was a risk, and there was a risk that some person might sit down in the chair of the president of Russian Federation, whom we don't know. The Russian Federation still has nukes, and the person who will be commanding the strategic nuclear triad, plus also have access to biological, chemical, and other means of warfare, is a unknown horse, and the only thing known about him that he likes to kill people by sledgehammering them to death. And I did speak about that in the stream with Romanenko, that if Prigozhin had won, his only chance to survive would be to start leading a very adequate internal and external politics to sustain himself as the self-proclaimed protector of Russian Federation. Because if he would be starting to do illegitimate politics that would not be appreciated internally, then to assassinate him and to destroy the whole military component of Russian Federation, that would be not an issue legally on the international arena, because your legal president is removed. You're not technically, in this case, attacking anybody, because Russia ceased to exist as the independent state at this moment. It's a mutiny state, and then you're just taking care of the situation in there. You're not invading anything. So that would be his only chance to survive if he started doing very smart politics, at least in the beginning of his reign. But the funniest reaction that I saw was the president of Kazakhstan, Tokayev, said, "Oh, that's internal matter of Russia." And China also came out and said, "This is Russian inner politics." So don't expect CSTO interjection or Chinese interjection into the events in Russia. And I think Tokayev might have been called from Beijing, or he probably called Beijing. Putin probably doesn't call out of the blue. It's a protocol, so you expect that Putin will call, and he probably called China and asked, "How should I react to this?" And China's position, it's inner business of Russia. And now look at this with the eyes of Indians and Chinese. How do they see that picture? Carnival? Yeah, no, their message would be, what the dumb fucks are we partners with? Nuclear state, the permanent member of Security Council of United Nations, shooting their own jets and helicopters, destroying their own oil refineries and oil dumps in Rostov, kicking the doors in of the regional military command, and then excusing and saying, well, hey, we'll just go back. Military that are wavering, border guards that just let Prigozhin troops through and put their arms down, locals who are greeting these mutineers cheerfully, Lukashenko who jumped out of the woodwork. The main thing in politics is trust. Your partners need to understand that you are logical, you are somebody who can be trusted, who can be negotiated with. And what Russia demonstrated is total unpredictability and total crisis. That's why I don't believe in provocation, because the damage cost is much higher than any concessions that parties could have gained. So I think the second phase, whether it will happen now or 12 years later, like the revolution between 1905 and 1917. Now, on the West and on the East, there'll be intensive reassessment of risks and new risk management scenarios development. What if that situation unfolds? And they do need to understand how to react. They do need to understand their possible routes of action and the state of Russian nukes, and strategic decisions about that will be probably on the radar for the next couple months and will be brought on the NATO summit as well, because that posted another question to the NATO summit. What should we do if such a mutiny succeeds, if the guys who are killing people with sledgehammers are in the armchair of Russian president and have access to the nuclear arsenal? What do we do in this case? The world is never going to be the same. I'm sorry about this beaten up phrase, but now the world will be looking for ways to adapt to this possibility. And not only Russian regime now is criminal, it's also absolutely unmanageable. And Putin's political capital after these events is he stopped being a figure that is providing integrity of Russia. But he's now a figure that symbolizes the paralysis and the mess of Russian government system. Have you heard anywhere in the world that the armed troops would be marching to the capital, threatening to change power, and then agreed to something and just disbanded, and were left alive? That sounds like Africa, actually. These things happen there sometimes. Right, in Sudan. And let's just rename Russia to Sudan. They already have Wagner, so, right. But how long does it last? Till the next round? Even if they do something now and replace some leadership and all, but this situation will last maybe for a year and a half, because tribes, they are always warring against each other, especially in the situations with a lot of history of warring. But here we have not a tribal state, but a state that is a permanent member of United Nations Council. The state that is in a current war they're waging on their neighbor. So my resume is that the circus started. This is just the beginning. Now that circus will not be over until it will be resolved with some crisis and crash of Putin's system that will bury a lot of under its rubble. Will it happen tonight or will it happen a bit later? There are people talking that Prigozhin could have turned and taken Moscow again. No, I don't think that'll happen, because people are writing that he's actually moving his troops out. Well, right. I don't believe it's gonna matter if it happens right now or if it happens a year or two later or 5 years later. What happened is they desacralized power in Russia. Basically, they set an example. You can shoot 6 or 7 jets and helicopters down, capture military command of the district, and then agree and get the amnesty. So apparently blackmail works. Threatening with arms actually work. Marches on Moscow actually work. And if that works, let's see how many times do you think it'll be used? Oh, yeah, forever. So, yeah, I would even say everybody realized that only this thing works in Russia. So if that works, then that lever will be used just like that golden hammer, as long as it's useful. And the other question is that almighty leader of Russia, how long was he hiding until he showed up on the screen? Yeah, I think like between 9 and 12 hours. Yeah, he showed not at 9, he showed up much later than 9. So one needs to compare, right? Imagine Napoleon was there instead of Putin. What would Napoleon be doing? He would personally ride the white horse to stop Prigozhin and to take him prisoner and to fight them down south. He would be energetically placing block posts and commanding his military positions and elevating corporals to colonels, would be giving them rank of nobility for their brave actions, and he would be stopping Wagner troops across the bridges, and he'd be talking to his nation to prepare for the resistance. But the guy who disappears for 12 hours and cannot even say anything during that period when it's the most difficult crisis happening in the country, this is very obvious situation for those who are tracing him close, especially Russian elites, who are thinking how to finish all that mess and what to do. And there is a good saying in military: the way the order is given is the way the order is executed. So if your commander is staying quiet for 12 hours during crisis, the conclusion is only one, especially with the force agencies. Um, you cannot rely on that person. He will give up on you. He will not be on your side. And now Russian government also has to explain somehow to the families of dead pilots why and how did they die. And how do you do that if you came to some agreement with Prigozhin? But nobody will explain. And what signal does the officers' corps get? Yep, you're just meat for the grinder. You'll be given up whenever the situation feels comfortable. You'll be used as an asswipe and then discarded, regardless of the person in power. Does it add any mood to the Russian military? I don't know what can add or change their military, because on the background of all their failure in Ukraine and that situation, I think they're already at some of the lowest points. Why would now they be inspired to go and attack Kiev? Oh yeah, nobody's going to attack Kiev. That war is lost for them. I am eager to say more. This mutiny forever, and in big bold letters, forever changed the agenda from external to the internal. That's Lenin's classic statement. Let's turn unfair imperialistic war into the fair internal civil war. And that point shifted, yes. So that I don't think that attention point will shift back into the war with Ukraine. I think it moved that point to the inner Russian politics agenda. And it's very difficult to win external wars when your inner agenda is the leading point. Ukraine is probably not so much a focal point of Russian population now either, because most people are interested in what's going to happen when is the second act. And when your point of attention is inside, you probably will not be too successful on anything you do externally. Now, any K-52 pilot, the helicopter, they know each other, right? It's a very narrow circle. It's like 400 pilots. Now the one going up to attack positions in Ukraine, what goes through his mind? I just buried my pal, Sergei, who was shot, 2 days ago, because Wagner's shot him down, and the guy knows his wife, his kids, he probably is his godfather or something for the family, for the children. And now he has to continue waging war and risk his life. And some of the Wagner troops are still downstairs, down there in the trenches. So what goes through his head? I'm helping those who killed my friend? Imagine the mess going in his head. You don't treat military like that. You don't help. That doesn't help. That makes Russian power weaker. That still brings the inner politics on the agenda, and that change the focus. How should I put it? Into the logic of a transitional period internally. All that Wagner's march for 2 days showed that Putin took away Russians' future. So Putin made Russia into a cemetery. He offered them stability and perpetuity, right? So, and then the cults of death and all that shit related to it. That's what's Russia now. And Wagner's march to Moscow, that gave hope. That gave some hope to Russians. And now the lid is closed, supposedly, but everybody felt that hope for a few days. Now everybody knows where to search for the source of happiness and how to do that. And after such a strong imprint onto the collective psyche, now the new joke that has been minted is that United States will provide $3.2 billion to Ukraine for popcorn because today Wagner leaves, tomorrow they don't, then later there'll be somebody else. Nobody guarantees that military would not try to repeat the same maneuver, or at least, you can expect Shoigu and Gerasimov to maybe follow the same path. It means that what Russians are seeing, that under some external pressure, Putin basically can dump on his own partners. Shoigu is almost his eternal friend since the 90s. So what? All of a sudden, our father is not even a father, but some crazy mad a-hole. The only guys who are stable are Kadyrov troops. As people are joking, they're still on the way to Rostov. Yeah, they're still somewhere 82 kilometers away from the city, stuck in traffic, still going. We saw some videos of somebody being disarmed, actually. No, that's not them. But that was funny. That's Wagner's Prigozhin troops reached Moscow, for almost 1,200 kilometers away from the front, where they entered. And these guys are still going the 100 kilometers to Rostov. But these are real heroes, right? All right, we have 306,000 with us, over 100,000 click the like button. We appreciate your attention and your help. We've been 36 minutes live. There's a special stream today, and it would be dumb to discuss something else but that feria that was happening in Moscow. Yeah, and I have 90,000 something. So overall, we have 400,000 watching us. Yep, we do. That's a good marker. So there are a couple side topics that I think are worth to discuss. There were some statements by Belarus volunteers who are fighting in Ukraine that it might make sense to use the situation. And yeah, Moscow and Russia is one thing, but Belarus is smaller and the opportunities are more ripe. So perhaps that can be used. And probably if situation unfolded the way it started in Russia, they would have used this chance in Belarus. But what do you think will happen in Belarus? Here is a very simple situation. Lukashenko lives as long as Putin lives. If Putin disappears, and Prigozhin, for example, would have been his chair, and Putin would have fled to St. Petersburg and created a small Ladaga People Republic there, then his troops would have wavered, and Lukashenko, I don't think, would have lasted long after that. That's why Poland was brought up in a heightened military alertness. Exactly for that, because Poland was expecting events with Belarus, because something needs to be done about nuclear arsenal, right? So wait, things will happen. That's still in the future. And okay, the last one is Russian Volunteer Corps and Legion of Russia. I had just an hour before you a stream with Denis Nikitin, White Rex. His call sign, he's the commander of Russian Volunteer Corps. He was giving you his warm hellos. And the question is, what do you think are his opportunities now? Because they're the ones who started these operations before Prigozhin. They were going to Bryansk, to Belgorod region, near New Volzhanka. If they had a chance, they would probably not turn away. They wouldn't, right? But they need about 25,000 people. And that's my question. Where do you take 25,000? I don't know. After events like that, perhaps you might get more fighters into that legion, because I suspect how many people are disconcerted, how people are disappointed, and they'll be looking for ways. The thing is, the ways to join. The thing is, it's a little difficult to go through filtering and testing and all to make sure that you are who you say you are. But give them maybe half a year. Remember when we were in Brussels, Olexiy, we talked that would be an interesting idea to capture a region in Russia, and then people without any checkups will flood it, those who don't want to live under Putin. Yeah, that's true. Because right now, in the current checkup and all with the Ukrainian military, it's difficult for them to increase their numbers fast. Now, if one imagines that Prigozhin decided to accept the jump from level 5 in Russian Federation to level 2, and the guarantee that he sees, for example, is having a certain position, then one can understand that. He is not eager to lead the victorious mutiny and become the dictator of Russia, but he is interested to elevate himself in the old Putin system. But here's the problem, Olexiy. System doesn't work like that, right? System doesn't work through military blackmail. So here it's a very he hit all the right spots of Russian soul. The guy who put Kadyrov troops down, who paid back for 30 years of abuse, who made his wage on truth and justice, two sacred wishes of Russian soul. And then the formula. 8 years ago, they were screaming, "We are going on Moscow to finish with corruption and injustice." And we changed our mind? And now he goes to Lukashenko. All of a sudden, there is no injustice and no corruption in Russia? Or did he just get a share of it? Right, to be just. We'll see. That'll emanate soon where it all goes. To get a good position is one thing, to not get anything is another. But I want to bring another story up. The story of a transfer in Chile, of a mutiny in Chile, of a coup in Chile. Allende, right? No, not just that. There were two attempts to a coup in Chile. Who suppressed the first coup attempt? Right, Pinochet. He was the one who did. He suppressed the first attempt, and he got endless support from Allende. And when he started to create his own coup, Allende was getting signs that Pinochet is getting ready to execute a coup. Allende did not believe that and was saying, well, he could have used the first one. You're lying. Why would you bring that to me? And when Allende was eventually killed, and he died with, by the way, a rifle in his hands, that's not Putin. Putin is not going to die with a rifle. And he still was not believing that it was Pinochet. And Pinochet knew that you do need a cover operation for every proper military operation. And the difference was, what, half a year, 6 months between coup number 1 and coup number 2? So for those who are watching us, I want to say, do not jump to the extremes. It's always so tempting to say, oh, that was pre-agreed. This was all agreed. And yeah, I can just imagine that how these people would comment the first coup attempt in Chile. And now somebody who is on the inner circle, looking at situation, knowing how that situation unfolded, he could prepare a proper coup. And not just to remove the previous power, because these are two different processes, to remove power and to take power and become the new power. These are two very different processes. A historic example would be, I'm trying to pull, something is on the, when they removed power and they invited the third party. Sorry, it's evening, my head spins. I had an example, I'll remember it. There was rather recently an example like that, when the third party was invited to lead. So the group that removed the power failed to become new power, and they had to invite somebody from a side. I know our viewers will probably remind me of that. I'm sorry, I'm tired. That's all right, Olexiy. So that's serious, right? That's pretty lengthy. What we can state, though, is that Russian system is completely rotten. It lost all of the authority internally and externally. And it was basically the countdown, the reverse countdown of the beginning of the end. Russia cannot exist as a country on that delegitimation that is going now. How long it'll take? That's a good question. But I believe that that reverse countdown started on the 22nd of June. All right, 313,000 are watching us. Over 110,000 clicked the like button. Thank you, dear friends. We are finishing our poll. We have 88,000 who voted. Prigozhin's raid is a coup, a mutiny, is 46%. Prearranged is 54%. Oh, Azerbaijan. Remember, there was a mutiny by Polkovnik Husseinov. He moved the power out, and then they invited Aliyev, the senior Aliyev, to run things. Yep. Abul Fasil Chibey, this is a well-known story. That's exactly how it happened there. And he was a sympathizer of Bozkurt. All right, we appreciate your being with us today. By day 486, it's exact 16 months since the beginning of this war. And one more important thing, Mark. I was caught outside by our military, and they asked to say hi to their platoon commander. I have to wave and say hi. I'm not giving names, but my personal hello to him. And as promised, hey, glory to Ukraine, you guys are good. We join your hellos to these commander, and we'll see you on Monday, right? If nothing happens tomorrow. If tomorrow Prigozhin doesn't do another trick. Okay, then that's it. Olexiy, bye. See you all. Good luck.